Today we're going to take a look at the oldest pub in England, or at least one of them. There are actually lots of contenders for the title, and I'll explain why that is in a while. So first let me explain where I am. I'm in Stow on the Wold, Gloucestershire, which is a lovely Cotswold town in the southwest of England, perched on the top of a hill. It's actually the highest town in the Cotswolds, and this is where today's contender, which is called the Porch House, is located. So why are there so many contenders? Why isn't there a single oldest pub in England? Well, I'll find somewhere to sit down and I'll explain. Why is today's pub only a contender for the title anyway? Well, it's because of the ambiguity of what we mean when we talk about England's oldest pub. Are we talking about the oldest structure, or are we talking about how long there's been a pub on the site? If there's a very old pub that gets demolished and rebuilt, does that count, or does that reset the clock? Or what if the structure's very old, but it's only been a pub for the last 200 or 300 years? So are we talking about the structure or a pub on the site? What if a place is very old and starts out as a pub, but then becomes something different, like, I don't know, a private residence, and then goes back to being a pub? Does that reset the clock? And does an inn count as being a pub? Do inn and pub mean the same thing anyway? So it's because of these ambiguities that there are lots of contenders for the title of England's oldest pub. Anyway, the pub in question today, the Porch House, is just on the other side of town, so let's go and take a look. Actually, we might as well take a quick look around Stow while we're on the way. As I said before, it's a lovely Cotswolds town. Stow on the Wold, or Edward Stow, or Stow St Edwards to give it its old name, it started out life as an Iron Age hill fort. It's perched on the top of a hill, which is, for defensive reasons, a good place to build a fort in the olden days when you had to worry about such things. Hence it being the highest town in the Cotswolds. It then became it had a market established sometime in the medieval period, and the town grew up around the market. Now, most of the buildings you see around here, I'm currently walking around the main square, which is called Market Square. The buildings here are 200 or 300 years old, so built in the 17 and 1800s. Of course, there are some much older buildings around here than that. We'll take a look at the church in a minute, which is a lot older, and we'll take a look at today's pub. Now, the pub in question, the Porch House, the building itself is over 400 years old, and the pub itself claims to date back to 947 AD, so very old indeed, if it's to be believed. Another lovely day for walking around. Okay, I can see the church over there, so let's go and take a look. Of course, the Cotswolds are famous for this golden-coloured limestone. It's one of the distinctive features of the region. Okay, here's the churchyard with some kind of service going on, so I'm not sure if I want to actually walk through. I can't work out if it's a wedding or a funeral. So this is the church of St Edward. So named after St Edward, as was Stow in the early days. As I mentioned, it started out life as Stow St Edwards or Edward Stow. Now, this church dates back likely to the 11 or 1200s. Okay, let's take a look around the back, see what's there. Oh, look at this. Isn't this the cutest door you've ever seen? It looks like something a hobbit would live in. Which isn't surprising. Tolkien lived not too far away from here. He was based at Oxford, which is on the edge of the Cotswolds, and it's thought that the Cotswolds was his inspiration for the Shire. Anyway, let's go and take a look at that pub. Okay, here it is, the Porch House. England's oldest inn, circa 947 AD. So, behind me is the Porch House, the oldest pub in England, or so they claim. There's more than one sign on the outside making that claim. So, established 947 AD, they would have us believe. Now, the building itself is obviously not that old. It's an old building, clearly, but not over 1,000 years old. In fact, I know exactly how old it is because there's a date above the door. The building, it was built in 1615. However, it's claimed that it was a rebuild of a previous structure that was on this site. And it's also claimed that some of the timbers from the old structure were reused in this. Now, I've been inside and there are a lot of timbers and roof beams and what have you. There's also a very old fireplace in there that's made of stone rather than timber and covered in what they call witch marks. So apparently something to do with witchcraft in the old ages. Good witchcraft though, not bad witchcraft, the lady was at pains to say. Not quite sure how old the fireplace surround is, but again, it's the kind of thing that would have been preserved from a previous structure and integrated into the new one. Some of the beams were radiocarbon dated and proven to be just over 1,000 years old, so there might be some authenticity in their claim. I was shown a large beam above the bar, and that was one of the beams that was radiocarbon dated, so that gives some seal of approval. However, it's still not certain that this has been in continuous use as a pub since that time. Apparently the building we see behind us is several structures merged into one. Part of it was at one time a leper hospital, for example. It's also not guaranteed that the beams are actually from this structure. So, like every other pub in this series, there's going to be some doubt. However, I think it's a good contender. Either way, it's just been a very nice place to look. It's certainly a lovely pub if you're planning on visiting, and just very nice to walk through Stow. Okay, there are a couple of plaques with information on. So there's one outside, I'll show it you here, you can pause if you want to read it. And another one inside by the bar. So those will give you a bit more information about this place that maybe I've missed out from this video. So that's it, contender number 1 for the oldest pub in England, the Porch House, Stow in the Wold. Thanks for watching, more videos coming along very soon.